everybody, and welcome into the Ferrario Face Off here on ClaibsOnline.com. I'm Matthew Rocchio, filling in for Mike Claiborne, who I'm very jealous of right now, considering the weather. That's Alex Ferrario. Obviously, he's the face, he's the name of the Ferrario Face Off. I'm just here filling in. So, Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Rocchio. You and I, of course, teammates at 101 ESPN, and now we're teammates on the Ferrario Face Off.
Absolutely. I did a little baseball when Joe Rod was out over the summer. Obviously, I do basketball with Bob Ramsey, and now I'm getting some hockey in too. So I'm just
Jack of all trades.
I'm just getting around the podcasting network a little bit right now. So we have a lot to talk about. Obviously, the last time you and Claibs talked, the Blues were just coming off that 8-game losing streak. They had finally logged a win. It was finally in the rearview mirror, and now with a 5-game winning streak, hoping to push that to 6 on Saturday against the Ducks. I think the big question everyone's asking right now: what have been the biggest differences in this 5-game winning streak as opposed to those 8 losses?
Well, a couple of different things. I think the main difference for me is that they finally have 4 lines that they can play, because in that 8-game losing streak, one, you didn't have a 4th line. Although we like the named Alexei Toropchenko, Nola Chari, and then the guys that they were floating in and out, they tried Logan Brown, they tried Tyler Pitlick. Nobody really stuck there. And then you didn't have a Ryan O'Reilly line. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly was absent in a lot of games. He talked about how poorly he was playing, but he also didn't have line mates to rely on. Brandon Saad wasn't there with him. Josh Levo wasn't a factor at that time. You were playing Braden Shen up top. You were trying to get Jordan Kyrou to work. You really had 2 lines that you could rely on in games. You had 6 or 7 guys that you could rely on offensively. Now you have 4 lines. Now Ryan O'Reilly has found 2 really good partners in Josh Levo and Brandon Saad. Braden Shen is bringing out the best in Jordan Kyrou. You found a 4th line that's got some consistency to their game. And then, of course, you got Thomas Tarasenko and Buchnevich. A perfect example of that is go back to the Chicago Blackhawks victory. Nobody played more than 17 minutes as a forward. I mean, the 4th line played close to 11 minutes that night. When you were able to spread the wealth like that and know that you're going to get consistency in offense from those guys, you're in a position that gives you an opportunity to succeed. And then the second thing for me that's changed, Rock, is the way that they play defensively. I believe Panger has talked about this. Craig Berube's talked about this. They've gone a little bit more to a zone defense than that man-to-man defense. They're still doing that strategy, but they're really focusing on keeping things to the outside and focusing on around the crease, or what they like to call in the house. And they're really not giving up a lot of those opportunities in the midst of this 5-game win streak.
Yeah, I thought Jamie Rivers, another one of our 101 partners, I thought he did a great job illustrating throughout that 8-game losing streak just how easy it was for players to get into the center offensive zone against the St. Louis Blues, and how it was because they had moved from that man-to-man to that zone, and how they were just not executing the scheme the way they really need to. And like you said, it seems like they found a happy medium between like the hard man-to-man from last year and a hard zone they started with, and that's kind of been one of the big step-ups in the defense. You mentioned the lineup change. My big question right now is, I know Craig Berube likes to change up the lines a lot. So even with that said, how long-term is this Saad, O'Reilly, Levo line, you think?
Well, I think Saad, O'Reilly are the whole season. And the way I always like to look at the line pairs, and this goes back to the way Ken Hitchcock used to coach, you don't look at trios, you look at duos. And if you look at the duos, it's Thomas and Buchnevich, Thomas Tarasenko, however you want to view that. I think it's more Thomas Tarasenko this season because Buch has moved around a little bit. Shen and Kyrou are your new pair, and O'Reilly and Saad are your pair. And I know a lot of people will go to the third one and say, yeah, but Josh Levo's only a temporary fix. Maybe, but when things are working, you don't take it away. And right now, Josh Levo deserves a lot more credit for what he is doing than what people are giving him, because Josh Levo, he's got 4 assists on the season, and all 4 of those assists are primary assists for the goals scored from O'Reilly or Brandon Saad in this win streak. On top of that, Craig Berube has discussed it numerous times. He holds on to the puck, and Brian O'Reilly needs a guy that's not going to just float around and try and find a loose puck and take the shot. Ryan O'Reilly needs a guy who is going to go behind the net, win puck battles, hold on to the puck, and create space for he and Brandon Saad to find their way to the open net. A perfect example of that is to go back to the Colorado Avalanche game. Josh Levo wins puck battle behind the Colorado net, takes 2 guys off of the puck, and then is able to push it up to Ryan O'Reilly, who is shooting down the right side of the ice into the face-off circle to take the shot and beat Georgiev. That's what Josh Levo does. So Josh Levo, he's only played over 250 games in the NHL. Josh Levo has spent his entire career in the NHL being a third or fourth line forward. Do I think this is going to be a 82-plus game thing where he is now a top 6 winger? Probably not, but I think what you're getting from Josh Levo right now is a opening to instill confidence in Ryan O'Reilly's game once again. And if I'm Craig Berube, I'm keeping that together until it looks like it's a liability on the ice.
One other takeaway from the forward lines right now, other than the fourth line, finally showing up, is it me or is there still another level, offensively especially, from this Thomas, Tarasenko, Buchnevich line that we haven't even seen over this 5-game win streak, that if they can tap into, potentially is another level that maybe we were thinking they could reach preseason that kind of got dampened during that 8-game skid?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I believe so. I mean, look, Buchnevich missed some time, so it's hard to judge. I think he scored his first goal the other night against Washington, first since his first game of the season. He missed some time. Vladimir Tarasenko's in a little bit of a dry spell, but that happens where he goes quiet and then he goes on a hot streak. But they're not producing the way that people expected them to. I mean, coming into the season, I think a lot of people expected Thomas to have close to 100 points because he hit 75 last season. But here's the thing. One, you no longer, if you're an opponent, come to St. Louis and circle Ryan O'Reilly's name and say, that's the line we got to worry about. In years past, it's been O'Reilly and Perron getting the circle around them, and that's what Thomas shined. Now it's Thomas, Tarasenko, Buchnevich. They're getting the best defensive opponents because they're the best line on paper. But I also think, Craig Berube said it, they're also getting a little too cute with their offense. You're taking a lot of shots. You're not taking a lot of shots. You're making a little many 2 extra passes. I loved how they played that game against Washington. Vladdy picks up 2 assists. Their line picks up 2 goals. But that Buchnevich one is a perfect example of it. It was a set play where Vladdy pushed the puck up the ice, allowed Buchnevich to outskate the defender, take it, fake the shot, wrap around, goal. When this team is just direct in terms of going to the net, taking shots rather than getting too fancy with it, you're going to see more offense from them. So right now it might seem like on paper they're not scoring a lot, but I would imagine by the middle of the season, we're going to be talking about that line being one of their best offensive lines once again.
Absolutely. Let's look back on the defense a little bit because there's been obviously some storylines there over the last few games. And the positive has obviously been the emergence of Calle Rosen. He's been, he not only has he been scoring goals, but he's been great defensively. And him and Nico Mikkola have really come together as a solid pairing. On the more negative side, obviously, is now Colton Parayko being out for this past game, potentially the leader on your defense, missing him. Talk a little bit about, Calle Rosen. What can he be long-term for this team, him and Mikkola, and also how noticeable right off the bat is the loss of a guy like Colton Parayko?
Yeah, let's start with Parayko, Rock. I think when you ask how noticeable it is, go back and watch the rest of that game against the Capitals because that, to me, was what your defense will look like if you don't have Colton Parayko out on the ice. I know a lot of people view Colton Parayko as a guy who's overpaid for what they think he should be. But for me, if you don't have Colton Parayko out on the ice, you are basically playing pond hockey with the opponents. And honestly, go to the Chicago Blackhawks game. I mean, the second period was basically just odd man rush after odd man rush. Some of that's the responsibility on the forwards to make sure they're cleaning up their own end. But Colton Parayko is just a steady presence. He is a guy that leads the team in even strength time on ice. Like, there's a reason that this team gives those opportunities to him. It's not because, well, he's the only one we got. No, Justin Falk can play there. Torrey Krug can play there. Nick Leddy can play there. But Colton Parayko is the calming force on that defense for them. He's big. He's got a long reach. He's able to calm things down. So it's a little concerning with what they're dealing with. Berube said Parayko's injury has nothing to do with his back problems. So you take him for his word. That's a really good thing to hear because if it was, I'd be concerned. Yeah. But 2 straight games without Colton Parayko always makes you a little nervous. But the good news is you do have depth. You've got Nick Leddy. You've got Justin Falk, who Justin Falk has led the last 2 games without Parayko in ice time. You've won both of those games. And Calle Rosen has been, I don't want to say a pleasant surprise because he was good last year for them. I mean, heck, when he had to come into that game against the Minnesota Wild when they were down so many defensemen in the playoffs last year, Calle Rosen played like 25 minutes that night for them. But Callie Rosen, to me, is a lot like Carl Gunnarsson. And the coaching staff has comped him to Carl Gunnarsson. Carl Gunnarsson was the perfect type of defenseman that you never needed to worry about because you knew what he was going to provide you every night. Like, you don't notice him. And when you don't notice a defenseman, that means he's doing the right things on the ice. So Callie Rosen is creating defense opportunities for himself. He's playing very sound in his own zone. He's a perfectly capable third pairing defenseman for you. I don't think you want him playing in your top 4 with those minutes, but if you're giving him 15, 16 a night, he's going to be fine. And he's got offense to his game. He's not going to score you 15 goals. He's not Erik Karlsson out there, but if he gets the puck on his stick, he's going to put the puck on the net, which is something that this team has struggled with this season.
He has been a pleasant surprise. I'll say that, just because when you see him last year and how well he was able to play, there were up and downs after some of the bright spots. And so to see a consistent run at a point also, again, when you don't have a Colton Parayko, and you're talking about how they're leaning on these guys for upwards of 20 minutes, even the third pairing, that's pretty hefty right out of the gate. And it's been important too, because the play in front of the goaltenders has been such a big talking point. And let's keep on moving backwards as we go to the goaltenders, because obviously when you have a 40 save night from your backup goalie and Greiss last night, that's an incredible performance. But Binnington, game in, game out, has been very good. I mean, if you take out a couple maybe bad games, he's got a pretty good save percentage, Alex.
Yeah, I see what you did right there, Rock, didn't you? You're trying to get me fired up once again like I was on social media the other night.
I'm sorry I had to do it. Well, it was right there.
What Rock is mentioning, if you missed it, was myself and Greg Wyshynski. Look, I'll say this up front. I love Greg Wyshynski. He does incredible work, but Greg Wyshynski fired back on my tweet the other night to where I basically laid it out and said, like, look, Jordan Binnington is better than what his stats say. Like, I think he's sitting at like a .905 save percentage right now, which is good, but you look at it and you say, well, he hasn't been great, which is what the narrative around Jordan Binnington has been all season long. But I put that out there and said, you take away that Kings game, the Montreal Canadiens game, and the Islanders game, and you're talking about a goaltender who's got the third best save percentage in the National Hockey League. And of course, I've got responses that said, well, sure, if you could take out all of his losses, he'd be 82-0 on the season. But why I say take those 3 games away, Rock?
Context is king.
Exactly. If you go and watch those games, I'd love for somebody to find a goal that was scored on Binnington and tell me that was the goalie's fault, because it wasn't. And Joe Vitale, my partner on pre-games on the Blues broadcast, he talked to David Alexander, the Blues goaltending coach. And he told me that Joey said that, I would imagine Jordan Binnington's probably had 2 or 3 goals that he gave up this season that he probably would wish he had back. And David Alexander is going to be much more critical of his goaltender than we will be. But David Alexander said there was 5 that I'd say Binnington gave up this season that he'd want back and that he should have had. 5 goals for Jordan Binnington. and so you have gotten top 5 goaltender this season play out of Jordan Binnington all year long, with or without those stats on his stat sheet from those losses. Third periods this season, when going into the third with the lead, he's 5-0 with a .947 save percentage. He's got a .942 save percentage on the road this season. That includes losses that he's been a part of. And on top of it, he has he's saved your bacon numerous times to help you pick up 4 points on this road trip that they just got back from. So Jordan Binnington has been everything for this team. Thomas Greiss has been very good and has given the team the opportunity to win on every single night. And I have said this for the last couple of years. If you've got a team that has a goaltender who you trust and the other elements of the team aren't playing well, you're going to be fine. If you've got a team that your other elements are playing well and your goaltender stinks, your team's not going to be good. So I think the Blues are fine. And Jordan Binnington, I said my bold prediction at the beginning of the season was he's going to get Vezina Trophy votes. I will stand by that statement. By the end of the year, Binnington will get Vezina Trophy votes.
There it is. And you know what? They've worked everybody back to 500, and it was so nice of them. The rest of the entire division just decided to kind of wait along for the Blues, say, hey, come on, catch up. Let's make this a little bit interesting. The Central not taking advantage of the Blues' lull at the beginning of the season. The Stars are sitting at the top with 22 points. That's only 6 points higher than the Blues. That's nothing this early. what are you seeing right now across the Central? Why do you think we're seeing such a downturn in what used to be such a competitive division?
Yeah, it's wild, Rock. It's not even just the Central. The Western Conference just has
Yeah.
not been good. You've got 6 teams in the Western Conference that have a plus goal differential, which is insane. Like the worst team in both the Central and the Pacific Division, they're 7 points out of a playoff spot still.
There is so much red on these standings.
Yeah, like Anaheim is 7 points out of a playoff spot. They've scored 47 goals in 15 games this season. Like,
this is nuts.
It's wild. So the Central Division specifically, though, Dallas has been good. Winnipeg has been really good. Like Winnipeg's won 8 of their last 10 games. Dallas has won 7 of their last 10. But everyone else is about 500. So, like, what the Central Division has done this season has basically said, hey, we stink too, so just kind of build yourself back up. And I think that's dangerous because if you allow a Craig Berube team to find itself whenever they're going through a struggle, if you don't kill off that opponent when they're dealing with issues, you're going to regret it because Craig Berube has shown, and he's got a track record of teams that struggle at some point in the season, they'll figure it out. And if you give them enough time, they'll be a tough opponent to play against. You've got the 2018-19 Cup run, 2019-2020 season. They struggled a little in January and figured it out the rest of the way. The pandemic season, they really weren't that great at the beginning of the year and figured it out. And then this season. So the Central Division messed up. Chicago and Arizona, they're not going to be good teams. I think we know that. Minnesota is just a really wild team right now, pun intended, with how they're trying to figure out what their identity is. Nashville, I thought, was going to be better, and they have not been. They haven't gotten the goaltending. So you're talking about 4 teams in the Central: Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, and St. Louis. And in terms of track record, I give St. Louis the advantage over Winnipeg and Dallas of figuring it out for a full season.
Speaking of bad teams, I'm going to need 2 predictions here, and then we'll finish off this podcast. Number 1, who is right now your lose hard for Bedard favorite in the NHL?
I like how you went lose hard and not suck hard for Bedard.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Rock.
Yeah, I do.
I would say, boy, that's a good question. I would say probably right now it's going to be either Anaheim or San Jose. San Jose is going to trade Erik Karlsson because somebody's going to jump into those waters to pick up the defenseman, even with the rest of his contract. And Anaheim is going to trade away John Klingberg, and wouldn't surprise me if they trade away John Gibson. My bet would be Anaheim Ducks are going to be a really bad team for the rest of this season. They'll be the ones that finish off getting the top pick for Bedard.
So with that said, Blues face off against the Anaheim Ducks on Saturday. Is it a trap game for a team on a 5-game winning streak?
No, because I expect Jordan Binnington to play that. And I also expect the Blues to get back to the way that they were playing on that road trip. I think the Washington Capitals game wasn't so much a trap game as it was the Blues being exhausted from that road trip. They played 4 games in 6 days. They had just come back off the road, and back-to-backs have been a problem for the Blues this season. Saturday's game, I think, will be fine. I'd actually say Monday's game against Anaheim will be the tougher one because the team will be able to have seen St. Louis. St. Louis will be able to have seen Anaheim, and at that point, you kind of know the game plan there. But I don't think Saturday's a trap game. I think Saturday the Blues will be ready for that one. They get the off day today. They'll do a morning skate tomorrow, and then, of course, they'll go into action. Anaheim gives up a lot of goals. Binnington back in between the pipes, I would envision for St. Louis. But the problem for St. Louis is they got to be ready for that offense because despite them not scoring a lot, they've got a ton of talent in Trevor Zegras who can create offense out of nothing. So there'll be a tougher opponent that people will give them credit for. But I think this will be a game for St. Louis that they'll be ready for what to expect out of a team that's struggling.
That kid's going to go to a lot of All-Star games in his career.
Yeah.
Trevor Zegras is an
Imagine him playing with Connor Bedard.
God,
yeah.
That's going to be monstrous. All right, well, speaking of that Ducks game on Saturday, you're going to be able to hear Alex Ferrario with the pregame on 101 ESPN starting at 6 p.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
6 p.m. pregame on 101 ESPN with Alex Ferrario, so you'll be able to listen to him there. We'll have another edition of the Ferrario Face Off next week when the Blues hopefully are looking at maybe even a 7-game winning streak as they play the lose hard for Bedard favorites in the Anaheim Ducks twice in a row. Till then, I'm Matthew Rocchio. Thank you very much for your time today, Alex Ferrario. I hope you have a great weekend. Obviously, hope the kids stay healthy. Hope everything's going great at home. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy a Blues hockey game. And again, 6 p.m. on 101 ESPN. Be there for some more Alex Ferrario talking hockey.
As one of St. Louis's largest veteran-owned companies, St. Louis Acura knows what it means to serve. As we head into the holiday season, St. Louis Acura is collecting Toys for Tots for the United States Marine Corps and a clothing drive for local military charities and churches. Each donation can earn a gift from our boutique or a discount on a vehicle service or car wash. Please help us help others this holiday season, and thank you for helping St. Louis Acura become one of the area's top 50 fastest growing businesses for 2021.